Five, four, three, two, one. This is the Jazz 08, also known as Jeremy the Jazz Guillory. And
Michael, Michael, the wrestling classic.
all right, so today we are focusing on this is a broken turnbuckle. Today we are focusing in on the forbidden question for wrestling fans. So um, let's go ahead and rip the band aid off. So, Mike,
Sure, go ahead.
uh, why do we watch wrestling and, for lack of better terms, not just focusing on the forbidden question here,
Right.
let's also focus in on the forbidden word. Don't we know that wrestling is fake?
Okay, here I'll give a little history lesson. Long time ago, Circus Circuit had big strongmen do wrestling. It was like that kind of setup. It wasn't really set. Wasn't fake. It was real basically, and people had tried to beat the wrestler for money. Well, I turned from circus in I think 30s and 40s when I started turning wrestling. It was predetermined that banks didn't want anybody hurt like boxing. And basically, it was predetermined on TV for promoter stuff. Wasn't on TV until the 50s. And then they decided to just predetermine and make it fake so nobody get hurt. It was just entertainment purposes. Back then, TV was just entertainment. Was that much sports or anything on there at the time when it first came out back in the 50s. And 60s started turning to a different type of era. Still predetermined, still fake, but it turned to more physical, but not as much. But longer matches, basically 60, 70-minute matches, stuff like that. Matches were exciting at the time, but it was too long. 70s came along, and a lot of territories started popping up more to predetermine and keep their wrestlers. Because that time it was territory was just a long time. Basically, it was like 89 territories, something like that. So many of them in many states, and each one had their own wrestler to keep number one. So they predetermined him winning all the time. Like for example, in the 70s, NWA had Harley Race. He won all the time. They wanted to keep the champion until they find somebody. That's why some predetermined stuff until they find a superstar that can get money in the butts of the seats. And Bruno had New York at the time, and Bruno, who was still wrestling, he was retired. I had his territory. He was a champion in Minnesota, and everybody else had their own champion, either old wrestlers or wrestlers they can trust. That's what he's predetermined and fake is they can keep him for a long time. Then the A's came along, and Vince McMahon killed the system. Basically, he made more predetermined, more fake, and more cartoonish than for entertainment values. He wanted entertainment. He didn't want wrestling. He just wanted entertainment for fans to see more. So he did that cartoonish always through for the kiddies and stuff. Then the 90s came and was still key until Paul Heyman and Todd Gordon changed Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme Championship Wrestling. And wrestlers that those who didn't want wrestled there or violence. All the violence was real. It was not fake violence. It was all real. They used everything for real. It wasn't fake. The wrestler could handle it, but it wasn't. It wasn't totally fake. It was more violent oriented because the music industry changed. Everything changed. Wrestling had to change. And then by the time '95 came along, Vince came along with the Attitude Era, and then Bischoff a year or two later, NWO. If it wasn't for, like I said, ECW clashing, one got the wrestling. And from then on, it went their own direction. WCW closed, ECW closed. Vince kept going with putting wrestlers in the back area, to wrestlers who were younger wrestlers that knew what they wanted to do with the industry. Why I think Triple H is still doing it because Vince trained them during the time he was wrestling to help the industry along. All the wrestlers helped out. All the active, non-active, they put all their 2 cents in all the way to now to run the industry, do what they want, agree, talk, everything. It's it's still predetermined today, but not as fake as it used to be. A lot of it is real. Sabu, for example, opponent Sandman, he actually hit for the first punch in wrestling right in the face. He didn't fake it. He nearly knocked Sandman out with the first punch. That's how he started. He was real and fake. He controlled everything. It's called control. You don't want to hurt the other wrestler too. That's why it says predetermined. You want to control the situation. Don't get the wrestler hurt, but still entertain the fans.
Yeah, yeah,
And basically, that's what's going on. That's all I got to say about that. So I'm rambling on again.
yeah, yeah.
What do
So,
you think? What do you think about years watching it? What do you think about
okay, okay. So the history of wrestling goes way before the 50s and 60s.
That's why I said
Yeah,
circus industry
yeah.
basically.
Circus
That's why I said
industry happened
started with.
in like the 1910s, 1920s.
Yep. I don't give
Um,
you. They
there
start around.
were wrestling shows in the 1900s. Abraham Lincoln even wrestled at one
Yes,
point.
he did.
Um,
Yes, he did.
and wrestling dates back to um, pre-Olympic times in ancient Greece. That's where wrestling actually originated.
Yep.
Um, and somewhere between the first Olympic wrestling match and I want to say the 1880s or so, it
Mm-hmm.
went from an actual sport to actually entertainment. Um, and there was even a show, a wrestling event between two world champions, a U.S. champion and a Russian champion, where they wrestled each other, and it lasted about, I want to say, 3 days, from what I've heard. And that was in like 1908 or 1910. And they wrestled for so many days or so many hours that people just got bored with it. And I originally thought, well, that's why they have it predetermined now, because that match was not predetermined at all. Because who in their right mind would have that long of a wrestling match and things just to go for the championship? You're not
Mm-hmm.
entertaining people at that point.
Right.
And if you are, you're basically going around not really having much of a break, and you're drawing a crowd. Some people are leaving, some people are coming, and it's getting to the point where people are just not really interested in seeing who wins at that point. It's a stalemate. Um, but that's why they have timed matches sometimes and things so that they don't go the full show. Um, WWE has only had one episode of Raw where the entire show was just one whole match, and that was that gauntlet match. And Seth Rollins just killed that match, just stole the show for that one. He stayed there all the way.
The reason was for that, and if I remember right, a lot of wrestlers were hurt. I think that was the time when Stephanie Triple H were first running it, and a lot of wrestlers were getting hurt
No,
for some
no,
reason.
this was in like 2016.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the time because about the time Stephanie Triple H started taking up. I'm saying a lot of wrestlers got hurt that year. That year, sometimes they want. A lot of them want to go out and do the wrestling matches. Want to see the pay-per-views too. That was another reason. So
Yeah,
everybody's were not going that great 2016. So
yeah,
but they did the gauntlet match so we can watch it so they can get to the pay-per-view.
yeah,
That's another reason a lot of wrestling people talk about it.
yeah,
How true it is, that's what I'm hearing from other outlets that I read or watch. Sometimes it does that sometimes, where they want
yeah,
to run
yeah,
things.
yeah. So when did you learn that wrestling was fake? Or
Well, a long time ago, I didn't know what wrestling was when I was like 5, 6 years old. My grandparents used to talk about all the time. And they used to wrestle in a city near here. They said that Gorgeous George's, Bruno Sammartino. My grandma was on the same bus with Bruno. He didn't say nothing to nobody. He was just sitting there minding his business on his way to the wrestling ring. Like back then, they took buses to the ring with everybody else.
yeah,
They had a bunch of cars. I'm the one ride cars back then. Bruno didn't like riding the car. He loved riding buses and subways. That's how he was back then. And then they talk about this wrestler. Oh, I thought there was stories. I don't know if it's true or not. Then back in '78, my aunt got a thing called cable TV. It was first coming out in our area. Started in New York City, but it came in our area around '78, had like 30 channels. So I stayed in her house all night with her son, and we usually go to bed early to watch the news, go to bed. It was nothing on, but then Saturday night, Vince Jr.'s WWF Championship Wrestling came on the Jersey Channel. Well, that's the channel at midnight and Saturday nights. Started watching it. Well, my great great grandfather, who always talked about wrestling, found out. Was like 88 years old. Got cable for our house. Stayed up all at midnight. He never did that and watched the wrestling every Saturday night till his death. at 90. He loved wrestling. He's the one that got me into it. He's the one, and then I knew it was kind of fake because in the 80s it was all cartoonish and stuff, and Hulk Hogan kept winning matches, and it clicked in my brain that wrestlers not actually get hurt. And they're you see punches sometimes don't even connect. Not as hard. And then pre-term because Hogan always won, Flair always won. As I said, that's how you know until the pair reviews. They find someone to take over for them. That's how you know. It's how I basically know those guys. Hogan's brilliant on TV, but Flair was on TV for Horseman almost every week. Some matches were real with the Horsemen. They really hurt people. Yeah. But Ric Flair's matches wasn't really a violent match. It was just technical and stuff like that. And they kept him tight because he's popular.
Yeah.
Because this is how fake was called as well. Fake was not called predetermined. It means they already know who wins. They show the match, and then they win.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
Just to keep the fans in the seat, to have a perfect person that every attributes to keep people interested in watching. Not just champions, but all their superstars.
Yeah.
You can't just say, "Oh, I'm gonna hurt you. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." That's old school. You can't do that anymore. If you want something different,
yeah.
Nothing has to change. Has to change, or else it's going to be a dull system.
Yeah. So I found out there were rumblings about it being fake for me around 2000, 2001 ish.
Yeah, because you're younger than me, so.
Yeah. So the way that I found out was it was in 2002 or 3. I go to church. Ted DiBiase is a guest speaker there. He does his little sermon at the church, and then he goes down to the Union Building, and he starts signing autographs and things. And I just flat out ask him, some people have been telling me it's fake, and he just cuts me off and says, "Yes, it is. Yes, it is."
Like I said, it's called predetermined now. It's no longer called fake.
Yeah. I mean, he just shut down that question almost immediately, and he was like, there's no sugarcoating this. I'm retired now. You know.
Yeah, you can see it, but if he was wrestling today, and you tell him to wrestle their face, they'll tell you no.
Yeah,
because they'll lose a lot of publicity. But now he's retired, he can say it. Yeah. Back in the 80s, it was. Back in the 80s, it was fake. It was so called fake. It was because he wrestled the late 70s. He started through the 80s and the early 90s.
Yeah. So
all that, like I said, it was all predetermined and fake.
Yeah.
That's what I just told you.
Yeah. So you look at that, and you also look at the video of.
You can tell.
Yeah. And you take a look at the interview with the one wrestler. They did the Dark Side of the Ring on the guy where he slapped the reporter and said, "Does that feel fake?"
Dr. Dwight David Schultz.
David Schultz,
that.
Yes.
Actually, I watched that 2020 segment.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was he was not supposed to put his hands on the wrestler. It pissed him off. He didn't want to be interviewed, but Vince forced him to if he watched it because Hogan didn't want to interview.
Yeah.
And when he said that, it pissed him off, and he got beaten up for it.
Yeah.
Vince thought it was funny, but now he started suing. You can't put your hands on
I mean,
but back then is very secretive. Back in the early 80s, it's still secretive.
Yeah.
That's what fake.
Another thing that kind of exposed them on that was in 1987. There was a feud between Jim Hacksaw Duggan and the Iron Sheik.
Oh, and USA. Yep, I remember that. I saw the whole feud. I can tell.
And what was going on was that they were having a very public feud. And what people did not realize that they were also riding with each other.
Yeah,
and they got
wrestlers ride each other and work out the matches. How do you work
Yeah.
out the matches?
Yeah.
They ride together and work out the matches. How they want to set up. How
Yeah.
they want
Yeah.
highs and lows.
Yeah.
That's how they did it.
And they got pulled over by the cops. The cops were wrestling fans.
Oh yeah, the drunk driving incident.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that very well.
And they were out drinking, and they got pulled over for a DUI. And
Yep, I
they're
heard.
like,
Yep,
and the
I
cops are
remember
sitting
reading
there
that.
like, why are you two riding with each other? Y'all were on each other's heads.
Yeah, but what's not
And
real?
the
What's
press had
not
a
real?
field day with that one.
Well, that's real, and this actually happened. Watch some of these documentaries. Fans thought it was real. If you saw one last week, they had on Sheik. One guy pulled a gun out and it jammed. He
Yeah.
wanted to shoot the Sheik in the ring.
Yeah.
I mean, the fans take these too often. They turn violent. They hit that back then. They don't do it now. Back then, violence. They attack people's cars, attack people.
Yeah.
Like one time, I was watching ECW, and one of the Pitbulls. If you know Pitbulls, they're a tag team basically. Raven
Yeah.
put together. They're two big guys who were singles wrestlers that wrestled each other. Type of tag team, and one of the best tag teams in ECW. Well, Gary Wolf broke his neck the night that he would hit the belt. Shane Douglas did it. Him and Francine ran to their car with fans attacking them. They had to call the cops to get the fans stop shaking the car. One fan had a knife, one fan was going to hit him. It was like, they were going to kill him for doing that. Because back then, they were real. They thought they were real back then. They were pretty determined. But early days, ECW thought there was all the violent stuff that thought were real. But then a little later on, everybody knew it wasn't real. But back then, some of these rap fans, I mean, even in the 60s and 70s, like Dean Malenko's father got harassed a lot. Like, a lot of people did. Because Billy Graham got harassed a lot. A lot of these people, bad guy wrestlers, they won against, especially the original Sheik and all. And Volkov was just starting in the 70s. He was attacked too sometimes for being a foreigner.
Yeah.
It's just they're characters, but the man real back then. But and then it had to go fake because there was too much violence from the fans.
Yeah.
They had to announce it was predetermined to stop the violence.
Yeah.
From the fans themselves.
Do you remember the NWO brawl with WCW backstage?
Oh yeah.
In Florida.
Second, like the third or fourth week of Nitro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What happened? I remember what happened. Oh my God! People around. They thought it was a real fight.
They called the cops.
They called the ambulance.
The cops actually show up there as Kevin Nash is throwing Rey Mysterio into the trailer.
Very black on top of his hands, trying to get the full force. But then,
the cops actually see it, and they try to break it up, and they all thought it was real. They actually had to cut the cameras off to tell them, "Hey, this is a live show that's going on right now."
They got cameras off the cops, and then it went off, and then after that, told them went off the air.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said,
I mean,
crazy. I guess the crazy stuff like that happened way back when.
Yeah.
Not like it is now.
I mean, it gets so real. It blurs the line between reality and entertainment.
That's why, because get more realism. Like I said, ECW brought more realism to the wrestling, and they had to step the other two up because they're talked about more than WCW was at the time, because they're all different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then then people get tapes from Japan and Mexico. Well, none of the wrestling here, there is more than that than American wrestling. That's why that's why Conan brought Rey Mysterio so close to ECW. That's why Eddie Guerrero and all that came from independent scene to there. I mean, to show up the showcase and stuff. They want more high flyers and stuff like that instead of the regular big bulky guys in the same storylines.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I said, once for that, you wouldn't have no NWO, you wouldn't have no Attitude Era.
Yeah.
You don't get credit for that to happen because everything's got to change. Yeah. Everything does.
So, does the revelation of wrestling being fake or predetermined actually change or impact people's perception of wrestling, or does it actually create more fans for it, or does it diminish the fan base?
Well, depending on what place you go to. These days, some arenas are empty, like we said, AEW last week. We see empty seats. TNA had a lot of empty seats, but then when they were Impact, when they came TNA and then decided to go WWE, more seats didn't fit in because they're going in a different direction. AEW is
Mm.
trying to relive, I think, in my opinion, WCW. I'm sorry. They're trying to do that. And some of the wrestlers I like are not wrestling there no more. Like Britt's not wrestling there no more. I
Yeah.
haven't seen M. Cole in a long time. I'm see a lot of these wrestlers leave the industry and don't want to come back to AEW. They don't wait out their
Yeah.
contract.
Yeah.
Like Sammy Guevara's wife, she's waiting out for her contract. She's not coming back. She wants to be a mother. She doesn't want to wrestle anymore. So basically, she's out of action. She tells the wrestling contract same for her anymore because, like I said, all the same old people win every week. And then look at smaller organizations like NWA, they always sell out. They wear small arena, yeah, but everybody just talks about it.
Yeah.
Billy Corgan still runs it. Like he ran it when he's in the '90s and got more. He's doing a lot of stuff. He's doing right. I mean, one work sure can do. Well, if you're a diehard wrestling fan, you want to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Hey, you do what you want to do. It's what the fans want, not the promoters. This is fans based now. They're talking to the fans now. They want to see what fans want to see, not just what they put on way back when.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it enhances the revelation of the predetermined and scripted. Actually, enhances the storylines more.
Yep. Like I said,
Gets people more interested in it.
Yep, I've been saying it gets too boring after a while. Just do
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah. But what hurts it the most is when they have two separate storylines involving similar wrestlers at the same time. Like a champion having a storyline with this guy and another guy, number one contender, at the same time. And you know that this other match is happening before a big title match at a major event, and he's having to defend his title against someone else at a minor event. You know, pretty much a smaller pay per view before he goes to the bigger pay per view, and you already know that he's going to win that match because the real money is between him and the other guy.
Right. It's not talking about who wins the match. It's the match itself, how good the match is.
Yeah.
That's what people want to see. Now,
Yeah.
when they want to win, it's not that they get the person not going to win. They want to see a good match. It's not half an hour long, unless you got two wrestlers that can handle it.
Yeah.
That's the only way they'll do those type of matches. But
Yeah.
they want to see more. They want to see more entertainment now, more wrestling than just who wins, who loses, stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
That's how it is now. It's just a story now. It's just telling the story in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that issue there. And there are several different examples that you can use, especially when it comes to WrestleMania season, when they have the event between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. And you already know who won the Royal Rumble at that point. You already know who he wants to face. But the champion has to defend his belt in the match between there.
I heard that.
What?
Thunder. We're at both a major thunderstorm up here today.
Okay. So. Okay. So.
We might hear little rumblings outside my windows open. So just let you know I'm here. That thunder.
So. Yeah. So the big question that I ask the independents around here is, you know, y'all travel all the way around the state here, and y'all have all these different matches. How do you prepare for a match that you already know that you're going to lose? You know, and the way that I have to word it is, okay, you know that the champion is going to be defending the belt against you, but he also has this other big match against your tag team partner, basically, or something like that. And how do you actually mentally prepare yourself for that? How do you actually prepare? And they say, well, first off, we have to make a good storyline for it. We have to make a good defense for it. And they have said that, the biggest secret for that is to sell the match as if he could actually lose the match, and try to sell the point where the fans could get into the fact that, okay, even if he loses the match, our match could be just as good or even better than the other match, the other title defense.
Right.
So that's why they mostly, when they have those matches, they prefer it to be against two individuals who are like tag teams or something, that actually show something good or have a separate rivalry with. That way, if something does happen or they do botch the finish, they're able to actually fix it.
There's your cat again.
So, another example of something going out of plan would be, if you recall, there was a First Blood match at the pay-per-view between Kane and Austin.
Yes, I remember that one.
And Kane accidentally won that match because he made Austin bleed.
That's what First Blood match was.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Austin already bled.
The rule for First Blood is you draw First Blood and win the match that way. Yep. If you get a minor cut, you automatically lose the match. So that's basically what happened with Steve Austin, is that he got a minor cut or a gash in his head.
Well, basically, if you ever watched his biography, after he got hit in the head and chair by the band, anytime you touch a certain part of his head towards here,
yeah,
it bleed by itself. You didn't need to blade it. It wasn't a closed wound. He showed the wound. It was a scar, like a red scar. That's the wound that gets hit to start bleeding. Yeah. And had to bleed him that night. And Kane kept hitting him in the head in the same place. And he knew it. And the blood starts squirting out because it opens itself. Yeah. Because he got hit severely by a chair, really hard by Vince. It was supposed to hit him that hard when they're wrestling, when he was attacked. But he did hit him hard accidentally. Yeah. He touched his head, I'll start bleeding. Yeah. That's how he never got. That's how the rest of his life he never got bladed because his head busted open.
Yeah. And
no bleeding anymore for him.
Believe it or not. And then the next night on Raw, they have another title match, and they have Kane just drop the title. It was still an entertaining match, but they actually made him lose the title. But at the same time, for a First Blood match between Steve Austin and the guy in the mask, the first question that I would have to ask is, okay, how do you make a guy in a mask bleed?
Anything's exposed. Like his neck was exposed, but his hands were. You want to cut his hands, but it's not hard to cut his hands. What is they're trying to push Kane, make him a bigger star. Because when he first started, they was like, my feud Undertaker wasn't that exciting. But then they saw how he wrestled the Undertaker. It was Undertaker's idea to put him and his brother, him and Paul, because he wrestled them when he was Smoky Mountain. They wrestled him independently. He thought he'd be a great star. Then he came Isaac Jacob with then the New Diesel. And when Undertaker came up to have a brother, it started going good. But he wanted him to branch other places besides that. That's why he put him with Austin to make him a bigger star. And he won that night of pay-per-view to get him in the top tier. And then lose the next night to Austin. It wasn't the First Blood match.
Yeah.
It has to make bigger stars. They put in certain matches, they think wrestlers, they're starting out, make them bigger by letting the wrestler Okay, like I said, they wanted to take bigger stars. You know, like at the time you didn't have many big stars. You had the older stars, but you got to push Triple H, you had to push Kane, you had to push Cactus Jack, and all that to get the next generation ready. That's what Attitude Era was. They pushed Austin first and The Rock, and they pushed them first. Bret Hart helped push The Rock, helped push Austin. He thought Austin was going to be a star. That's why he did that. See, every generation you have to get more people, more stars in there. And for Kane, Kane was already a standout in independent singles. Al Snow kind of discovered him and brought him into Smoky Mountain as a tag team partner. And knew
Yeah.
the guy could handle it because he was trained by Larry Sharp. I know who Larry Sharp is. He's a violent wrestler back in the 60s and 70s. He owned this thing called the Monster Factory and trained people. I remember a lot of people, he trained a lot of the bigger men in wrestling to handle themselves in the ring. That's like Kane. If you're, I'm not naming wrestlers, but if your people went through there, basically, these older wrestlers decided to open schools back a long time ago for races open schools. And trains wrestlers today. Like Kane was trained by Larry Sharp. He was in some independent scene. Then he went to Smoky Mountain, and then nobody bought it. And one of the wrestlers, they picked him because Undertaker recommended him because he fought him. He said he was going to be a good wrestler. They didn't know what to do him at the time, and then all of a sudden, when Paul Bearer came up with the idea of bringing him, instead of using Undertaker's original name, use Kane for his brother's name. That's because originally he was known as Kane the Undertaker when he
Yeah.
first came in. A lot of people probably don't know that, but that's what he did. And then their feud started. And then when the feud was over with, they wanted to have nothing to do with him. So Austin and Rock and everybody else decided, well, this guy's a good wrestler. Let's put him in the top tier with us. It took like 2 or 3 years of all the matches he did, and Undertaker helped him out. He became one of the biggest stars in wrestling. I mean, you gotta do stuff. You can't just always go wrestle leave alone. You gotta know you can work with the guy. The guy can actually wrestle. Actually has a passion that will work with you. If you can't, Maven, for example, he wasn't a good wrestler. Undertaker did not like him. He put the Royal Rumble, we pulled him out. Yeah, that was supposed to happen. But afterwards, the wrestling was not happening because he couldn't. He came and hits and stuff. They pissed him off. That's why Undertaker attacked him outside of the ring in the extended stance because he was pissed. So they kept the tape rolling. Maven is a wrestler, but he's never going to be top tier. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
he's a wrestler.
Did you
Even like
see?
he's got better now, but back then when you used to toughen him and stuff, you weren't ready.
Yeah.
They
Did-
just pushed you too much.
Did you see
I like to
his
say-
conversation with the Undertaker regarding the Royal Rumble match and what all they said behind the scenes of it? Where Undertaker actually said that it was his idea for Raven to drop kick him out of the ring.
Yeah, he wanted to see how this guy can work.
Yeah,
That's how they do it. But he didn't like it.
yeah,
He didn't like it. If you piss wrestlers, sometimes wrestlers go off the script.
yeah,
If you piss them off with that.
yeah.
That's why the Attitude Era is always off the script. And sometimes you can't stand it, you get pissed off and you really go after them. Not like it is now.
Yeah.
Like it's more scripted than stuff like that. Like I said, you have to push new stars. You can't just try to cling a position. Because back then, all wrestlers couldn't position. They didn't want to make new stars. Nobody did. By the time Vince didn't want to make new stars either. He wanted all established stars already from other places. He started pushing new stars until the 90s when people like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart convinced him, you got to get these new guys in. We're not going to be around that long. You know what I mean? You got to get new stars or else you're going to lose ratings. That's why WWE didn't have the ratings they did in the early 90s until you started making new stars back in the mid 90s. Like Steve Austin or Rock, DX. It wasn't for people like Bret Hart or anybody else of the 80s not pushing new stars. Wrestling won't be here today. I mean, it'll still be old wrestlers. The Rovers will never get a break. Independence probably still be around. More independence will still be around. And then push new stars with new training facilities now.
Yeah.
You gotta get new stars. And you can't just sit there and watch the old crap. You can watch the old crap, old teams, on anytime, any place, anywhere to watch the old stuff. But
Yeah.
you don't get new stuff today.
So another thing that we need to talk about or address is the gimmicks in
Yep.
wrestling.
Yep.
So there are some really good gimmicks, some off the wall gimmicks, and some just
Yeah, but you want to forget.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I can mention a few.
Some of the good gimmicks I would like to say are the Devon and Bubba Ray Dudley boys, where they say that they are actually blood brothers and things.
Okay,
Um,
here's the story of the Dudleys. I know I first saw them. The characters are blood brothers because the father was a traveling salesman, getting laid by leads and in pregnancies. That's how the
yeah,
gimmick started.
yeah,
Now, they can't say they're blood brothers because they're characters, but in real life, they both came from the same city but different parts. They both lived in New York City and didn't even meet until ECW.
yeah,
Because Devon was trained by Larry Sharp. A lot of people do not know that. If you watch their documentary, if you ever catch documentary, W documentary or AEW documentary, you'll find out that who they were trained by. And Bubba was getting screwed by all the trainers he trained him. He was getting screwed all over the place. But when they came Dudleys, they were joking entertainment. But then Paul wanted to make it more serious. So that's when they came more violent. Ron Devon it came more violent, more vile. Like tonight in like on I forgot what period it was. They were off script, telling fans off on pay per
yeah,
view. Nasty shit. If you ever watched it.
yeah,
Like one woman tell her daughter to suck, and then try to find that guy ready to fight before the opponents came out. Is they were trying to start a riot,
yeah,
but had to get the wrestlers out to stop them.
yeah.
This is a live pay
So,
per view.
yeah,
But then later on, when they got to continue on and stuff, Dusty W offered a contract, but they weren't going to be doing anything to Vince because Vince at the time, nobody know
yeah,
this, funded ECW to keep him going secretly because he wanted the wrestlers. How do you think they got Flash Funk?
yeah,
How do you think they got more ECW wrestlers going there than WCW? Like for example, Sabu went to WCW first, they get nowhere, and his uncle Sheik got injured after that one of the fighting moves. He went to WWE, he got better, but Vince wasn't into him
yeah.
that much.
So,
That's why he didn't use him. Like I said, the Dudleys evolved a long time. Then the gimmick was gone. Still Dudley gimmick. They didn't see none of my bloodlines. It just went straight wrestling.
yeah,
Humans they are today. And one for Raven, also known everybody wants to know he's known Sky the Body and
yeah,
Johnny Flamingo and all that stuff.
yeah.
Before he became Raven, he's the one who put these guys together. So
Yeah,
he's just saying can't be good.
another good tag team that we've already mentioned that have a really solid gimmick that's been going on for years is Kane and Undertaker. They're storyline brothers as well,
Mm-hmm.
but when you look at their backstory behind the scenes and things, you already know that they're not actually brothers.
No,
Uh,
everybody knew he was. They didn't know he was for as he had put a mask on him. But they knew he was as a king. They knew he was
Fake Diesel.
the new Diesel, the fake Diesel. They wouldn't recognize him. That's
Yeah,
why they put a mask on him,
yeah,
make him mystique. That way you know that later on they took the mask off, you knew who he was. They had a bald head. He had a head.
yeah,
Basically, Undertaker told him on the mask because he was like burnt in a fire and his face was all burnt and stuff like that.
yeah,
Basically, or else they would have recognized us. People were smarter back in towards the Attitude Era. They were smart.
yes,
Internet came out, trade tape came out. You have to fool the fans every time. You
definitely.
can't do it with some wrestlers. You
Yeah,
couldn't do it with Glenn Jacobs, but with Ascon,
yeah,
boom.
yeah,
That's what
and
about that.
yeah, and then we have the really bad gimmicks
Oh man,
around, like
wow.
Repo Man, um,
You know who Reaper Man was?
Toro.
You know who Reaper Man was?
Who?
Smash and Demolition. The second Smash, not the first one. The second one.
Okay.
Barry Darso was he also was part of the Russian team back in the early 80s in WCW with Nikita Koloff. He called himself Khrushchev back then. Basically, he started. That's where he started. After him and the Road Warriors trained in the same facility, and then he got into WCW as a Russian. After he did that, he was going to WWE. But at the time, Moondog Rex was the original Smash for the first few months, and it didn't work. He couldn't talk. So he switched him to Barry Darsow, who then became the Ripple Man,
Yeah,
who then became the Blacktop Bully, you know. And
yeah,
then his career died after that. But now they got a Legends contract, so they're possibly be in the Hall of Fame next year.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
And then there other bad gimmicks were, um, I forget what his name was, but he was basically a trash collector or something.
Dude, Dr. Dorsey, man, just got arrested for
He
child
just got arrested. Yes.
Dude, Dr.
Um,
Dorsey,
yeah,
really bad gimmick.
really bad gimmick and things.
I can tell you a lot of bad gimmicks you probably never heard of. Ever heard of a wrestler named Damien Demento?
Probably rings a bell.
He wasn't a popular wrestler. He was a character though he was trying to put on Monday Night Raw the first few years. They came to as also T.L. Hopper. He was Tony Anthony, Dirty White Boy, basically. Then there was let's see, WCW.
There were some that only lasted one match.
WCW had ding dongs.
Yeah. There was also Don't the Clown, but that one lasted a good while.
Well, because the original Dr. Clown was Matt Bourne, and then the rest of them were as popular. Matt Bourne was originally did Doink the Clown. Then he left after his, if you ever watched Dark Side of Wrestling, the reason why he left, they replaced him. So.
And then you get the other really bad gimmicks that actually last like one match or so, one night. I think there was one person there that had a gimmick so bad that he only lasted like 30 seconds in there in the ring. And
I forgot who that was.
Yeah, and Vince, right when he went backstage, Vince immediately just fired him. Like that.
Yeah, because he said he was a wrestler, but there's one gimmick that got big boo-boo, big controversy in ECW.
Mass Transit.
You know what I'm talking about? What happened was, and I found the story later on, this kid, underage, him and his buddy put the wrestling tapes together. He was never a trained wrestler. Paul, at the time, would hire anybody. And basically, they had the match. He wanted to get cut bad. But the cops were looking for New Jack, not his father. Basically, he tried to sue ECW, but they found out the phony tapes. They distributed. They found out he was underage, and Paul did not know that. And the lawsuit was dropped. Because he did to himself. He wanted to become a wrestler. You got to be trained for this. You can't just walk in. And this kid just walked in, stupid, and got himself hurt.
Yeah.
And his father blames wrestling. He said, no, you got to do your own kid. These kids need to be back there wrestling. Then they can be big wrestling superstars. But sometimes, if they're trained right for the professional circuit.
New Jack was actually interviewed for Dark Side of the Ring for that.
Brody Lee, for example, he did backyard wrestling long before he was trained.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Go ahead.
So yeah, New Jack was actually interviewed for Dark Side of the Ring for that incident.
And the ECW's Forever Hardcore, which is the second story of ECW that WWE didn't do. Jerry Borash directed it, and it was Sam who first started talking. His very first interview came on that DVD. So every find Forever Hardcore interview on YouTube, watched it. You'll know how he got into ECW.
Yeah. So
he never talked to them.
Yeah. And what's so interesting with these documentaries, especially with New Jack, you always picture New Jack being this very violent, aggressive person.
It's true.
It is true, but when you watch the documentary, he's very calm, collective.
Yeah,
and
he was a career criminal before he started wrestling. First, he wrestled in Smoky Mountain.
Yeah,
at the Gangsters. At the time, but he wasn't as violent. He wanted to do something. He came out of trouble, and then when that folded, they wrestled independence until he got to ECW.
Yeah.
And as we became violent, and that's he's trying to stay out of trouble. But a lot of times,
Yeah.
But these wrestlers can't stay out of trouble when they're in ring or retired or anything. That someone's going to pass them up and holler.
I mean, he tried to stay out of trouble.
Yes.
But would always find himself to get back into trouble.
Yeah, something happens in the ring, or something happens to this and that.
Yeah, something happens in the ring or something, and most of it is not really his idea. It's the other person's idea to do this. And he's like, "Are
Yeah.
you sure you want to do this?" You
Paul Heyman.
know, he's being the more professional here
Well,
on it.
Paul Heyman knew what he was doing
Yeah,
because he is experienced in wrestling. He wasn't going to schmuck off the streets and do this and hurt yourself. No,
no,
he knew what wrestlers. Wrestlers wanted to do this or not. They'll sometimes say no.
yeah,
Like the time when him and what's the other guys from the Baldies went up on the thing with New Jack's like he said, "He'll catch him, we catch him." He landed on him. His head was busted open, plain food going through his nose.
yeah,
He was seriously injured after Vic Grimes. After Vic Grimes did so. Years later, they're at XPW, and this is the truth. New Jeff tried to kill him in a major scalpel tables match. He really tried to kill him. He had exactly him to hit turnbuckle scene and kill him, but they moved the ring back.
yeah,
They went through the tables. He wanted to kill him for real.
yeah.
But it was his idea, and he blamed Vic Grimes for that. You do your ideas, no, that's going to happen. Because I guess this is real.
Yeah, yeah.
Not too careful.
And I've actually,
If a person fought, he's too bound for his own good. He knew.
yeah, yeah, and I've actually been backstage of a wrestling match or wrestling show before, and back there you can know when they talk about all their bumps and what all they can do to get the show better and things. But there are some guys, even in independence and in WWE, that tend to work what they call stiff.
Yes,
So
they don't want to do moves. They want to do regular type wrestling matches. Like for example,
they want to.
Andre Giant worked with the Ultimate Warrior. He is so freaking stiff. He didn't like wrestling with him. He has white think he let him do all his moves on him, and also he said he's stiff. Also, no one likes working with him because he was too stiff. He only had a few moves.
Yeah.
But other wrestlers carried him in the matches. Like Rick Rude carried him in that match, and Andre carried him in that. He wasn't really trained like Sting was.
Whenever you work stiff in a match, you always have to expect a receipt or something. They cannot say, "Hey, you're working stiff right now. You need to lighten up" or anything. They give you the warning.
Basically, when they get close together, they start talking, and he says, "Stay working stiff," and the guy won't stop working stiff. You'll work stiff. I'm gonna do something to you. The guy don't believe him. Boom. That's when you believe when he says he's gonna do to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Work stiff.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of wrestlers don't like it when their opponent works stiff at all.
No, because they don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know how to tell a story. That's what stiff means, folks. People that do not learn wrestling, they think they can do it, and they're not trained enough. That's what stiff means. You got to start doing stuff. You got to do what you're doing. Get the blank out of here.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta understand the lines between real and scripted and predetermined, and how to actually do the moves.
Accents happen.
Accents happen all the time. Yes, but there's difference between an accidental and an actual stiff move. Like someone could hit you.
Botch move. Botch move can do it too. That's what you're talking
about. So when I've only trained in the ring. I have not actually been in an actual recorded match in front of crowds. And the guys that I've been with, one of the things that we would work on is the chops and things. So be back in the corner, get chops several times.
Yep.
Eventually,
start you out with basically the basics.
Yeah. Eventually, if you get hit in the chest so many times, they want it to be so convincing that you actually sell it really good. The guy that I worked with one time just hit me so hard it knocked the complete wind out of me. It was like, yeah, that was.
Some wrestlers actually do the chops to see the redness on their chest when they know they're really hitting you.
Yeah.
Some wrestlers still do that to this very day.
Yeah.
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 This very day.
And
How much will do
You
that?
don't just need to sell it, but you also need to let them know, hey, you know, this is either a good shot or too bad of a shot. He had actually gotten hit so bad that he had a black eye on a show, and he ended up getting into a 30-second actual fight with the guy, all because of it.
Yeah,
Um,
stupid things sometimes. But you black guy, hey, is wrestling. Live with it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can't live with it,
yeah,
get the hell out of the business.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So,
I learned
you
this
know,
stuff. Anything, any bruises, anything can happen.
yeah, yeah, and
You want to hear three of the most violent things that happen in wrestling? What do you think three of the most violent things that ever happened in wrestling that you heard of or seen? There's three of them come to mind that I actually saw. I want your opinion. What do you think?
the
I'll tell you
top
three
thing
wrestlers.
that comes to the
Which one?
list
Which one?
would have to be Mankind. Um,
Not really, because he's always a violent. He was always a violent wrestler. As Cactus Jack.
I'm talking
Like
about
first,
Mick Foley does
the ear
come
thing,
up
right?
there, but there's
That's an accident. That's an accident that wasn't supposed to happen, but that's what the script said. He had to get into the ropes. That was scripted, but the ear thing wasn't
okay. What about the Hell in Cell match that he had?
scripted. Scripted. Mick Foley said is when he went backstage, he got up and walked. That was all scripted. Mick wanted to do those moves to prove how tough he was. Make more of a
What was
story.
not
He basically
scripted
wanted
though,
to, huh?
what was not scripted though, was that he was not supposed to go through the cell when he got chokeslammed.
I know because they twist ties with on there instead of metal things that's supposed to be on there.
Yeah,
And that's what I know. Ties. It was
yeah,
not his. It wasn't his fault. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the throw from the cage and come back to the ring. That was
yeah,
scripted.
yeah. That
I'm
part
talking
was
about the
scripted.
through.
That part
Not
was
when he fell
scripted.
through the ring. Fell through the ring part wasn't as bad as thrown off the cell.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, what's number three? You're gonna get my number two because you already gave me the first one.
Yeah, yeah.
Number two.
Probably the chair shots to the head, but there's an asterisk on that.
Scripted.
Yeah, they're scripted there. But
You ever seen the movie Beyond the Ring? His sister starts talking and gets stitched up. Like it was nothing.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not something you can't get up from. Okay, what's number three? I'm talking about really happened, not scripted. I can tell you they were scripted.
There's several of there.
One more comes to your mind. And I know the three I'm talking about that were not scripted.
Yeah. Um, let's see.
I might gross you out. So on some of these, so
I know there was one where Vader had popped his eye out. I know that one.
that was accident. He popped it back in.
Yeah.
Finished the match.
Yeah.
Three I'm talking about. Number one, the incident with the Sinister Minister. Back in ECW, they used to do promos. He's with a flare gun. He got so drunk, he stuffed it, put his stomach apart. You can see right in there. He goes in the back room. It was an accident. It wasn't scripted. It was supposed to be for an interview. They filmed it, but they didn't show the film. He went in there. They thought it was fake, and then he was starting to faint. And when they noticed he's fainting, they got him in the hospital. He blew his skin all the way to his inner wall. You could actually see his stomach. That was not scripted. That was real. And it took him several months to get skin graft from his legs to put on. That's why he wears pants now.
Yeah.
It was all the skin in his legs, and it fit. That was the stupidest thing he ever did. He regretted it. He said, he'll never do that stuff like that again. That was number one. Number two, Abdul Butcher against a Sheik, who later became Boss Mahoney. At the time of the Eastern Championship Wrestling, him and Abdul Butcher had a real match. He blew fire so much that Abdul's skin went right to his third wall and showed pictures in a wrestling magazine.
Another thing that
from his shoulder to his chest, you can see all his insides being fired and cut. It was accidental, but it turned to a real match.
Yeah. Another thing that
number three,
Sabu.
Sid Vicious falling off the top rope and breaking his leg on pay-per-view.
Oh yeah,
Him and Scott Steiner. He didn't want to go on the top rope. Bischoff said go for it. He didn't want to do it, but he was forced to do it. He knew he was going to
yeah.
injure himself, and that's what happened. He's supposed to land on his side, but he's so big, he landed on his leg instead and snapped it right in the ring.
Yeah.
That was not supposed to happen. But he knew it was going to happen. Those are three realities that can happen in wrestling. Happened a long time ago in the 90s. Anything can happen. These were real incidents. These were not fake. Help you out.
JBL.
He helped a lot of wrestlers in their careers. When they're in ECW, he kind of helped them out too, give them bigger.
Yeah. JBL is another one.
More things to do.
Yeah.
If he liked you, if he didn't like you, he wouldn't talk to you at all.
Yeah. JBL, you see him in the ring, and he does all these antics in the ring. You talk to him as a fan in person. He's actually very approachable in things, and will tell you the ins and outs of everything. I even talked to him about his bullying accusations, and he says, "Well, first off, you got to know where you draw the line at as a heel or anything." And
he knows not to go too far. I remember him when he was wrestling in Independence.
Yeah,
and it's a Justin Hawk Bradshaw, which name came to the ring with. That was his name in the Independence, Justin Hawk Bradshaw.
Yeah,
he's briefly in Global. You see a tape of him one or two episodes. He's in there for WWE yanked him.
Yeah, so
that's how I first saw him.
Yeah. So one of the things that I talked to him about was when you're backstage, a lot of the wrestlers like to play pranks and things. He was a prankster like Owen Hart was. So
a lot of them are pranksters. Mr. Fuji was a prankster.
Yeah. So
I'm a prankster back then.
So when I brought that up to him, he was like, "I'm glad that you understand it more so than a lot of others." Because when you go backstage and things, you gotta have thick skin. You gotta have thick skin.
Yeah, you gotta know between character and real person, unless they bring the reality to the ring.
Yeah.
And that's when you have the thick skin no more, and then the locker room and the owners take over. And you complain to them.
Yeah. Now, when I talked to him about the issue with him and the other commentator for NXT, he said, "Yeah, that was a big, big misunderstanding. A lot of people were pointing the finger at me because of my history, but in reality, it was."
He's just learning the basics. He didn't learn how to do what kind of his work. He just learned the basics. He's still a wrestler, but he's trying to transition. So it's harder transition than some wrestlers and commentators.
Yeah, but Marco actually just had an anxiety attack. That was nothing related to JBL, nothing related to anything. He just had a small.
He freaked out.
He had an anxiety attack that was not even related to anything that was going on, but all the internet rumors were pointing at JBL to where Triple H had to get involved, and he just immediately called him and said, "Hey, do you have an issue with me?" No, we don't.
Well, basically, also, he was watching. They watched the stuff in the grill position. Anything happens out there.
Yeah.
He called him, and they looked at the monitor, and saw what was going on. Boom, we got out there. Because he watches everything around the ring. The commentators, the wrestlers, the bands, everybody.
Yeah.
Because that's why they have monitors in the back. Anything happens, they can get the guys out there quickly.
Yeah.
So, stop from happening.
Yeah.
That's what they do now. Back then, they didn't have only one monitor for the match, nothing else. But now you got so many monitors because of injuries happening and stuff like that. Like Jerry Lawler's heart attack after that match.
Yeah, that became.
Hello. Todd tried talking. Hello. That's when they knew something was wrong.
Yeah, that's when you know wrestling goes
real. You
goes to real. Yeah,
you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So,
how about wrestling related deaths? People blame wrestling during their careers when they die. I give some examples. You don't know Owen Hart. How about Brian Pillman after his accident with his ankle and he did all drugs till his death?
A lot of people blame the drugs on there, but after the autopsy came out,
he took a lot of sports. He took steroids. He took a lethal combination the night before the pay-per-view he was supposed to wrestle. That's how he died. He mixed wrong stuff together without thinking. And
Autopsy shows that he died of a heart attack. So,
yeah, but
um,
also they found some substances he did a few nights before a mixture. The drug deal, he survived it, but then he died a few days later. He had
yeah,
a mixture. According to sources, he had a mixture cocktail of the wrong drugs, but he
yeah,
survived it. You know how he
yeah,
did? But then his body started giving up after that.
yeah,
The heart attack occurred because he's doing too much of that stuff.
yeah,
And like Louis Spicolli, he's an indie wrestler. No one knew him until he got to ECW. He started to get a path to become popular. He's supposed to be in a WWE match with another wrestler with Brian Pillman that night. He was supposed to push Louis Spicolli over that night of the pay-per-view. But then after he died, Louis went to ECW, wrestled there a while, then he quietly died. I don't
yeah,
know what, but he died. He died a few months after that. I don't know,
yeah,
from suicide or heart attack. But he's
yeah,
getting a good career in WWE until Brian died.
yeah,
Then Vince gave up on
yeah.
him. Like I said, like he's trying to push
There
through superstars.
was,
Sometimes things happen like this. The Owen Hart incident, Owen didn't want to do it in the first place. Vince kind of forced him.
yeah, yeah. There's been
That's the
several
first.
instances where wrestlers have died in the ring.
Yep, I can know a
Um,
couple.
the
I know a
Mexican
couple.
wrestler that wrestled Rey Mysterio several years ago is a big example. Um, where
He didn't take care of himself. That was the reason.
yeah, yeah, it was about attempt and things. Ray,
He didn't do it right, and he ran
yeah,
it wrong.
yeah,
That's what happened.
yeah,
Two I remember. Two I know. One time was I didn't remember this first one we talked about, but I heard a hearsay. But Teddy Diaz's father was a wrestler. He was in a match, and he died right in the ring after a big slam. He died of a heart attack. He
yeah,
lay in the ring, and no one knew what happened until
yeah,
about 5 10 minutes later that he was dead in the ring, and referee
yeah.
knew it. And the
There,
people out there. And
yeah,
then the Japanese woman that started her career out injured herself in the ring in back in the 90s and died right in the ring after a botched miss. She was in starting for her career.
yeah,
The other wrestler botched it accidentally because she slipped.
yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
draws, well, it wasn't dead, but someone threw something in the ring, and D'Lo injured him. An accident.
Accident. Yeah.
It was a couple. It was a couple.
They
According to him, it was a cup of
they
coffee.
never blamed each other
He
on
slipped.
that.
No, it was a cup of coffee. Saw on the footage. He slipped on it.
Yeah,
Like anybody can do anything wrong and stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Like the John Cena got hit with a bottle a few weeks ago by a fan.
yeah,
Like I said, these fans take this too seriously.
yeah.
That's
So
right there.
yeah, and there was also another wrestler who actually died in the ring in the middle of the match and still won the match because he had died right as he was covering the other guy. And
Mm-hmm.
you go back and watch that match, you can see that they immediately saw that something was wrong with
Mm-hmm.
them. And they went ahead and did the pinfall um, and did it that way. Um, another one is La Parca when he died. He died in the match. I forget if he won or lost that one.
Well, that was
Uh,
the first Parker.
yeah, the first one.
Not the one we know. That before he died, he trained the guy and he said, "You'll be the new Parker
Yeah,
if anything happens to me." And he came, and then the Parker came. The second, the Parker was Junior at first, but then he got to Junior and went to Parker afterwards. I knew it was the same wrestler.
yeah,
Because no one heard of the original Parker because he never was in the States. When he came to the States, he used the name
yeah,
to do tribute to him as a different wrestler. A lot of wrestlers do that sometimes. You've never heard these wrestlers, and they come first time, then usually you find out there's another person in that wrestling name, and they find out. Like Rey Mysterio, for example. He was Rey Mysterio Jr. time because his uncle was
yeah,
Rey Mysterio. Everybody's heard of him. His uncle. This is uncle wrestled States a few times. Then
yeah,
years later, he dropped the Junior in his name. Just
yeah,
to do it, years later, just to do the tribute
yeah.
to his uncle. A lot of
So
people don't know these things. If they're not into AAA wrestling, they're going to learn about it at the NXT pay per view coming up. It's mostly going to be AAA
yeah,
wrestling, nothing else.
yeah. So
NXT matches, no nothing in June. It's going to be straight Lucha Libre Triple A. You're going to see stuff you've probably never seen before. That they didn't do much in the States.
yeah. So next week,
Good.
episode 9,
All right.
26-year anniversary.
Your six what? Your six what?
26-year anniversary
Of what?
of this event. So
Which one?
which what major moment happened 26 years ago
Jeez.
on May 23rd, 1999, that
And
people
that's not
still
over
talk
the
about
edge.
today?
That's not over the edge. We already talked about Owen. That wasn't one of the major things that happened.
Owen.
Then there's a Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin thing happened that year. That match that turned Steve Austin into a superstar. There's
So
so many things I'm thinking in my head. I don't know which one you're talking about. So many things might have happened.
we've mentioned it about several times in this one segment alone. Um, it was a tragic event, and it was at a pay per view.
The Owen Hart thing I just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So next week,
I asked you and say yes or no, and I said that.
Yeah. Yeah. So next week, we are going to be talking about Owen Hart, his career, and everything that and we'll be discussing about the ramifications of his accident. So yeah, yeah. So, any final thoughts?
No, just did you record the thing I talked about when we ran rampant AEW? Did you record that or no? And I said something about AEW, what happened last week. Did I say anything about that yet in the recording?
We have not addressed that. So
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it again. I don't know who you. It could be Chris Jericho. It could be Tony. Whatever.
I already have an idea on who it was.
You're having the other one. Okay, I want to make sure you recorded it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do it again.
So
we did that.
Yeah. So I share.
I hope we show the whole rant. I want them to take notice.
Yeah. So I share my videos out on Messenger just to get the word out, as well as the page groups and all that other stuff, just to get our names out there. Part of marketing. Right. Was going to do a big advertisement segment for this one. I was off all week this week to do it.
Your show. I'm just your co-commentator. Yeah. Your show. Do what you want with it.
Yeah.
I'll totally agree. Do whatever you want. I'll totally agree to that.
Yeah.
This is not my show, folks. It's his show.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that situation. Watch AEW last week, and there was a backstage segment on there, and one of my friends that I shared to gave me a big thumbs up reaction to it. And at that time, I saw that we had 9 views.
What was backstage incident?
Do what?
I see it on YouTube. I tried to look for stuff on YouTube for AEW. I only saw the in ring. Never heard this backstage thing. What was it about?
Okay. So the backstage segment was MJF and MVP backstage.
Hurt business.
And he was saying, we're so glad that you're out here, and we're going to do a big contract signing. And he says, MJF says, well, I need my lawyer to take a look at the contract to make sure. And he's like, lawyer? Yeah, and he brings out Mark Sterling out there.
Okay.
And Mark Sterling goes out there and he says, "Well, we're going to need to do something bigger and better for this. We're not going to be doing this contract signing in a small venue where it's only front row seating or anything. We're going to need to have the full ring, the full roster coming out, fill up the ring and things for this because this is going to be a momentous occasion." And I was like, oh my freaking God, he actually watched our freaking video. He watched our freaking video and called us out on this.
He probably followed us. Hey, we're fans. Like I said,
He,
we're fans.
I
We're not.
was like, oh my freaking God, this guy is actually Mark freaking Sterling.
Well, basically, we're a lot different than other people. Other people don't talk about the regular wrestling stuff, but there's people out there like your show. We talk about anything off our top of our heads, nothing censored, nothing holding back. A lot of people like that. They kind of, they like to see spontaneous things happen. What other people think, and they can come and do their views if they want to too. Yeah. Hey, Sterling, anyone else wants to come on the show and talk? Hey, got that bro right there.
Yeah.
Because you're going to hear a lot of shit from me. Believe me, I've said a lot of shit so far. It's going to be a lot worse when it gets going.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone warns you about me, so I guess I'm old school.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just sitting here like, are you serious right now? And Tony Schiavone follows up with, yeah, you try to put that in a video game and see what happens.
Yeah, talking about the video game using some of the people that used to work for them that I work for AEW.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, that's why I messaged you saying, man, they really, someone actually saw our show from there.
We were telling them that these seats are shown.
Yeah.
If you want to do this, prove Brody, see if he can get butts in the seats and prove us wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to happen. It's going to prove us right. Yeah. People are going to sit watching at home anyhow on free TV. Then they're going to come to the arena and watch it.
Yeah.
They have to pay tickets to buy it to go see it and watch it on free TV. Well, it's not free TV, but
Yeah.
Let's see what happens if he proves us right or wrong.
Yeah.
Let me know what shows if I don't see it.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is our commentating, our shit, what we know. Nothing. We know nothing about ins and outs any industry. We just know what we see, what we learn.
Yeah.
We're just fans.
Yeah. So, other than that, this has been the Jedi 08, also known as Jeremy's the J. Guillory.
Fun bites the dust.
And this has been the Broken Turnbuckle Podcast. Thank you and good night.